The forced divestiture of Emcore's semiconductor assets by a Chinese-controlled entity, ordered by the Trump administration, represents a significant escalation in the ongoing tech war between the United States and China. This action underscores the heightened sensitivity surrounding semiconductor technology, its strategic importance in modern warfare and technological advancement, and the U.S.'s increasing willingness to intervene in commercial transactions deemed detrimental to national security interests. The order, issued by the President through the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, CFIUS, is not merely about this specific deal. It signals a broader strategy of protecting U.S. technological leadership and preventing China from gaining access to critical technologies that could bolster its military capabilities. At the heart of this issue lies the criticality of semiconductor technology. These chips are the brains of modern electronics, powering everything from smartphones and computers to advanced weapons systems and defense infrastructure. Control over semiconductor manufacturing and innovation translates directly into economic and military power. The U.S. has historically been a leader in semiconductor design and manufacturing, but China has been aggressively pursuing self-sufficiency in this area, investing heavily in its domestic semiconductor industry. This pursuit is driven by a desire to reduce reliance on foreign suppliers, particularly the U.S., and to become a dominant force in global technology. The deal in question involved a Chinese-controlled entity acquiring semiconductor assets from Emcore, a U.S. company. While the specifics of the assets are not always publicly disclosed in these cases, the implication is that they possess capabilities that could be leveraged by China's military or intelligence agencies. The U.S. government likely fears that access to Emcore's technology would allow China to enhance its own semiconductor capabilities, potentially giving it an edge in areas such as missile guidance systems, radar technology, and other military applications. The precise nature of the national security threat is often classified, but it typically revolves around concerns about technology transfer, access to sensitive information, and the potential for the technology to be used against the U.S. or its allies. The role of CFIUS is paramount in understanding this decision. CFIUS is an interagency committee that reviews foreign investments in U.S. businesses to determine their impact on national security. Over the years, CFIUS has become increasingly active in scrutinizing Chinese investments, particularly in sectors considered strategic, such as technology, energy, and defense. The committee has the power to recommend that the President block or unwind transactions that pose an unacceptable risk to national security. In this instance, CFIUS clearly determined that the acquisition of Emcore's assets by the Chinese-controlled firm constituted such a risk, leading to the President's order. Looking at the historical context, the U.S. has a long history of controlling technology exports and restricting foreign access to sensitive technologies for national security reasons. During the Cold War, these controls were primarily focused on preventing the Soviet Union and its allies from acquiring technologies that could enhance their military capabilities. In the post-Cold War era, the focus has shifted to other potential adversaries and competitors, particularly China. The rise of China as a technological power has led to increased scrutiny of its investments in U.S. technology companies and a growing concern about intellectual property theft and forced technology transfer. The Trump administration adopted a particularly hawkish stance on China, using tariffs, export controls, and investment restrictions to pressure Beijing on trade, technology, and human rights issues. The forced divestiture of Emcore's assets is consistent with this broader strategy. The broader context also includes the global semiconductor shortage, which has highlighted the vulnerability of supply chains and the strategic importance of domestic semiconductor production. The U.S. and other countries are now actively seeking to incentivize domestic semiconductor manufacturing to reduce reliance on foreign suppliers, particularly those in Asia. This trend further underscores the growing recognition of semiconductors as a critical national asset. The ramifications of this decision are significant. It sends a clear signal to Chinese companies that the U.S. will not hesitate to intervene in commercial transactions that are deemed to threaten national security. It also highlights the challenges faced by U.S. companies seeking to do business in China or with Chinese entities, as they must navigate a complex web of regulations and restrictions. The long-term impact of this decision will depend on how China responds. Beijing could retaliate with its own restrictions on U.S. companies operating in China, potentially escalating the tech war. Alternatively, it could seek to negotiate a more comprehensive agreement with the U.S. on trade and technology issues. In conclusion, the forced divestiture of Emcore's semiconductor assets is a watershed moment in the U.S.-China tech war. It reflects the growing strategic importance of semiconductor technology, the increasing scrutiny of Chinese investments in the U.S., and the willingness of the U.S. government to take assertive action to protect its national security interests. This decision is likely to have far-reaching implications for the global technology landscape and the future of U.S.-China relations. While seemingly isolated, it represents a calculated move within a larger strategic game focused on maintaining technological dominance and safeguarding national security in an era of intensifying geopolitical competition.